Connected in 3D, Real-Time Solutions and Digital Twins podcast with your host, Ashley Crowder.
Welcome to Connected in 3D, Real-Time Solutions and Digital Twins. I'm your host, Ashley Crowder, co-founder of Ventana. I've been working in 3D for over 15 years, helping IT leaders and business executives manage and deploy 3D at scale to increase speed to market, reduce costs, and improve sales, training, and maintenance. And I get tons of questions around digital twin and real-time 3D technology. So I started this podcast to bring on my incredibly talented friends and clients who are experts in various areas of 3D to help explain how this technology can be used today to accelerate your business and how it will change your business in the near future. So Chase, thanks so much for joining. Chase Walker is a senior simulations engineer focused on computational physics simulations of fluids and particles, who shifted into XR as a means to better explain the results of these simulations. So thanks so much for joining us, Chase.
Hey, yeah. Thanks for having me. It's been great working with you for the last, year at this point. It's crazy that it's already been that long. And we've made a whole lot of progress. So excited to talk about it.
Yeah, well, thanks for joining. And I can't believe it's been a year. That's wild.
Yeah.
And I know kind of your journey into this is also kind of crazy. So how did, walk us through the initial challenges Astec faced in sales, training, and maintenance that led you to explore 3D and AR? And how did you get into this from being, a simulations engineer?
Yeah. It's kind of a interesting, kind of crazy story. Aztec makes this large equipment that's everything from, we call it rock to road, which is anything that brings rock out of the ground and puts it back on the road and paves the road, everything from mining to crushing to paving, everything. And I was one of the design engineers, and really in the mid to late 2010s, we started to shift into all of our stuff being designed in 3D. We had always, mostly in some of our bigger locations, designed only in 2 dimensions. So 3-dimensional modeling for a large part of our business is really less than 10 years old. And so a lot of the challenges for that, even when I was just a design engineer, was showing these models to customers and to folks in the field to help them better understand it. So Astec does a lot of computational physics simulations as well. We started that team to do it where it was just more than one guy in 2020. We've been largely successful, but again, if you've seen simulation results, they're really, they look like they're made in 2003. They're not very attractive, and they're hard to really understand unless you're familiar with the simulation itself. So that sort of sent myself, my boss, and our team down this road of how do we take these complicated simulation results, whether it be particles or just, even planes showing stresses and whatever. How do we do that and show it in a way that makes it make sense? And so I've always been a big sort of like extended reality nerd on the side. And so this was kind of the perfect meeting point of that extended reality technology, augmented reality technology, and then the 3D that Aztec had been building for the last 5, 6, 7 years to meet in a way that we could use that technology to show off our equipment better.
Yeah, because it was like over the past 10 years, you had this amazing base of 3D content, which was huge. Because I know you guys are designing in SolidWorks, I believe,
Yeah.
and then using ANSYS for simulation models in 3D.
Yeah. ANSYS and Altair, who just got acquired by Siemens, it looks like. But yeah,
Oh,
those
wow.
two primarily. Yeah.
Got it. Yeah. And so you had this wealth of content, but it was locked in these programs, basically.
Yeah.
Right. It was
Yeah.
hard to show the non-simulation engineers what was happening.
Yeah, and anyone who knows anything about SolidWorks knows how it's great for designing, but it like you've said, the models are locked in SolidWorks, and visualizing them in a way that's usable if you don't have either SolidWorks Visualize or something is really difficult. So getting those models out of there was a big challenge for us in a way that's shareable.
Yeah. Yeah. So yeah, I'm glad Ventana was able to help you with that. And so once you got this live, what specific aspects of Aztec's operations have benefited the most from implementing 3D and AR technologies?
I think one of the biggest things for us is a big push from leadership that has sort of permeated the business over the last 5, 6, 7 years has been this whole one Aztec concept of Aztec was, I think it was around 20-ish brands across the world that sort of operated in silos. We had an overarching sort of corporate structure with a bunch of siloed operations. And one of the hard points of operating that way is when you've got guys like the marketing team, the overall sales team, those guys, they have a really hard time knowing when they're looking at the right thing when they're not a specialist. So for us, a big part of Ventana that when we initially met with you wasn't really something we were even thinking about was like 3D digital asset management in the cloud. But now that has become something that's very interesting, especially to hiring new sales guys and things like that, where they can go, I need a model of this specific piece of equipment. When we send it to them on Ventana, they know that we know when we go to source it, that's the single source of, information for our 3D content. And we can say, sales guy, no one else that's competing with you for the sale is going to have a 3D model of the thing that they want to buy. So that's been a big advantage for us, is that we have the single source that we can implement everywhere, from marketing materials, sales materials, to, even icons and buttons in our platform. All of that can be originating in Ventana, which has been super nice.
Yeah, and I know that it seems like sales enablement was a big driver, and I know you guys just won like a big project showing the being able to show the 3D, walk the people through to physically see in AR these new pieces of equipment at their plant, which is incredibly powerful, right?
Definitely.
And once the sales enablement makes sense, and then upper management's like, all right, it pays for itself. Where else can we use this? And training is great, and all that.
Exactly. That's what Yako, our CEO, he always asks me, how is this benefiting our sales team? How is this benefiting our sales team? Because, the product is nothing without having a benefit for the customer. Bringing in technology is cool, but if it's not providing like an actual value, then what's its real purpose? But Ventana has provided a lot of actual value, and we do a lot of extended reality stuff where, say, we only have 3 or 4 extended reality headsets. It's incredibly valuable to then be able to say, here's a QR code, scan this thing. You can see what everyone here is looking at on your phone in AR too. So it's been a great sales tool for sure.
Yeah, no, that's awesome. And from that customer engagement perspective, it's great. In terms of training, how's the use of interactive 3D models and AR changed the way your team approaches like onboarding and continuous education for employees?
So this is something that we're actually actively working on. Aztec has a team that specifically develops that training materials, as do most companies. And they initially were using sort of static images of models that, we had from animations from 10 years ago, or they were using actual pictures of the equipment in the field to do some of this, labeling of different subcomponents of equipment. And something that we've started doing really in the last 2 or 3 months is that team has been diving in to Ventana and using its hotspots in particular to link between submodels too. So something we've been experimenting with is where, there's this subcomponent of a larger piece of equipment, and we want to break down how what that is, what separate pieces are, how you maintain it, whatever. But using Ventana's hotspots, sending them the model, they can spin it around on their phone or on their computer, click on the hotspot, and then that hotspot can either show a video of the maintenance happening, show a video of a computational simulation of how that piece works, or it can take you deeper into the model and say, okay, now that subcomponent, this, generator pack or whatever, it now looks like this. So you're not trying to find it in the context of the major model. You can now see much more detail on it. So that's been a big development. We're building our first training module with Ventana as a part of it officially currently. So I can't really give feedback on how it's been going, but our training folks are super excited to use it because that interactability, as anyone knows, the more you can interact with something, the easier it is to learn. So even if you're stuck sitting behind a desk at a computer, you can still get a little bit more out of it if you can poke around on it and discover it more yourself.
Definitely, definitely. And so it will be interesting to see how that does over the next year. And how are you all measuring the use of 3D, whether it's for the sales team or, for this up and coming like training tests? Like curious how you all are measuring success.
That's interesting too, because that's something we're kind of figuring out as we go. Like, obviously, you guys give a lot of insight into like views by device type and stuff like that, and by time. But for us, we're still trying to figure that out because we know, like you mentioned, we did have a sales interaction that was really good with a customer that we ended up selling an asphalt plant with part of that presentation being Ventana plus some extended reality stuff. And I'm not really sure how we're still trying to figure out how to quantify that, because a lot of our more modern sales interactions really in the last 3 months involve Ventana in some capacity. We've had salesmen asking for showrooms or specific models to show off to customers as like a point of comparison. And so for me, that's something that we actually were discussing in the office earlier this morning, is like, we're giving all these models, starting to give them to salesmen. How do we start, like enabling the sales team and in a way that like helps them understand, we presented this Ventana model that showed this difference. We sold it in 3 days less or whatever turnaround. How do we quantify that number? That's definitely something we're still working on. And we know you guys have a lot of data. It's just a matter of trying to best quantify it in a way that actually shows the value.
Yeah, and like linking that with your CRM system, or however you all are tracking your sales, because I'm sure a lot of work goes into selling an asphalt plant. So that
Yeah,
was
yeah,
just
it's a lot. And so anything that we can do to say, this helped the customer understand the Aztec difference.
Mhm.
Can we quantify that with money? Maybe not, but can we quantify with that as like Aztec's a technology leader by
Mhm.
showing that you can experience this in different ways? That's probably how we best can quantify it, at least for now.
Yeah. No, that makes a lot of sense. And as the company started rolling out more and more 3D and AR solutions, were there unexpected benefits or challenges that arose during implementation?
So that's been sort of the fun thing about Ventana. I'll give the sort of how we met. We got Ben cold called my boss on LinkedIn, and we were having a lot of trouble with model decimation. Was our initial sort of problem for extended reality on headsets, and you guys solved that problem. And when we talk about like unexpected benefits, the unexpected benefit is now what we're using it for the most, which is the digital asset management side. We initially discovered Ventana solely as a shove a model into it. Your guys' algorithm is insane and gives you a model that is equal visual fidelity at like 95% reduction in polygon count and file size, etc. And so for us, that was our initial look. And then what kept us coming back, that was the surprise, was the digital asset management. When we had talked with you guys over the last year and figured out how exactly that could benefit us as being a single source of information. And so it's funny that what Ventana is was kind of the surprise for us, and I don't know how like accurate of an or good of an answer that is, but that really is what it was for us. Is we just saw you as the best file reduction for 3D content, and then we were convinced through that we needed the digital asset management side, and that's how we got here. So kind of a weird thing to say that the biggest surprise was like what you do, but that's kind of
That might be
that's what it was for
to
us.
to Erin, who works for us. She like sat me and Ben down last week and was like, "I think you guys overcomplicate what we do. I don't think you explain it well enough." And I'm like, "Thank you. We really need that feedback." But yeah, I mean, at the end of the day, a huge issue, that a whole barrier to the entire XR industry has been 3D file interoperability. And that's really what we went out to go solve, because if you have all these amazing simulation models in Altair and Ansys, or 3D designs and SolidWorks, but you can't share them with anybody, then like what's the point? And if you have to recreate assets just for a single sales headset use, the economics don't make sense.
Yeah,
But
I
if you
just
can,
opened up a model we uploaded
yeah,
today.
yeah.
And you guys took it with they did no further like customization, just your default settings. It reduced the polygon count from 10 million down to 1, and the file size from 271 megabytes to 5. So
Awesome.
that's sort of that's what lured us there. And then your management capability is what really kept us around. So it's crazy how those SolidWorks models are unusable out of the box, and you really have to do something to make them usable if you don't want to have to rely on a GPU or something to visualize them.
Right, right. And then, people are like, well, there's pixel streaming. And it's like, okay, you can do pixel streaming if you have incredibly amazing internet and you're only sharing with a few people because it can get very expensive. I think it's around $5 a minute, give or take, depending on the size. Which again, like certain use cases make sense, like enormous point clouds of an entire oil refinery, something like that. Um, but yeah, no, that's super cool.
Yeah,
Um,
totally.
and so, like looking ahead, how do you envision the role of 3D and augmented reality evolving at Aztec? Like, I know as Aztec Digital, you guys have an incredible, software platform that's helping people like understand the current capacity of their machines and optimize them. Um, I think you've talked about adding, the ability for more 3D visualization there, but would love to, yeah, hear more about where you see it going.
Yeah, yeah. You said Astec Digital, so I got to plug aztecdigital.com if you wanna check out what we're doing. But yeah, so Aztec, you speak about Aztec Digital, and I want to give like a 2-second version of what it is. So it's Aztec for the longest time. We've been sort of known for our customer experience and the quality of what I call just our iron. Our machines are good, our customer service is good. But obviously, more recently, the technological side is really important. And like you said, a big part of that is not just making like technology for the sake of technology. It's like implementing it in a way that benefits everybody. So if you're gonna make the phone, don't make it annoying to use to call somebody. So for us, the way that AR, XR kind of content feeds into that is again helping people understand what their equipment is, what it does, because so often a lot of what we build, really most everything that we build, is everything that's going on is hidden from view because you don't want to be exposed to what's happening in it. Whether it
Yeah.
be, rocks getting broken into a bunch of pieces, you don't want to be around that. You don't want to be around a burner firing into a drum, things like that. So for us, a big part of sort of the future state is not just having, when you log into the Aztec Digital's platform, when you log in there, not just having the ability to see your piece of equipment as a 3D model that's pulled from Ventana, but also being able to go in there and say, I want to teach my guys how the auger in the bottom of this piece of equipment works. So then you can go in and that training material is there. You can pull it in and it'll show a visualization of it, things like that. Really, the big piece to me is removing sort of the curtain behind which all of the stuff that Aztec's good at is hidden behind, which is
Mm,
the metal that all of the physics happens behind. So anything that we can do to make our equipment easier to understand, for the folks that are operating it, is I think a big advantage. And so much of that advantage is purely visual.
yeah.
Just because you never get to see inside this stuff. So taking something, cutting it in half, and having that accessible to the customer online so that they can see is huge.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. And I would imagine too, I mean, my one of my very first jobs actually worked at an oil refinery and it's kind of scary going in there. I mean, that equipment is dangerous. And if I had been able to train on more virtual equipment first, I think I probably would have felt a little more comfortable, going in, which I imagine would be
Totally.
helpful.
And that's something that we're, in the future, maybe getting the involvement of some of these simulators and stuff, whether it just be in a headset or with a little bit more manual capability of being able to maybe operate something. That's something that we've looked to Ventana as well, because again, our equipment is very complicated. And if you want to bring it into some sort of simulation environment, you can't just run a raw SolidWorks model through there. So yeah, anything that makes it easier to understand for the customers, where we see it being the most valuable.
Yeah, that makes sense. And going back a little bit to the adoption at your company, that has been so cool to see with now the Quest headsets. I remember when we were talking a year ago, you're like, look, we're old school. We're an old school industry. Like like it's going to be a challenge to get any of the salespeople to put on a headset. Like,
Right. Yeah.
what was that kind of like getting champions in the organization, kind of like how did you go about like winning over the sales team on 3D?
Yeah, it's been interesting. I think honestly, a big part of it initially was the fact that a lot of them knew me from having worked at a different role
Mhm.
in the company. But a big part of it has been, I still think a large part of our success with 3D, like with headsets even, has been the accompanying QR code content from Ventana. Because so often what we'll do, we take these to every trade show. I go to every trade show that Aztec goes to for the most part. And what we do is we pair the 3D content in the headset with 3D content on QRs, so that when someone walks up to the booth and they scan a QR with their phone, we then say, you could like hop in that thing if you wanted to look at it in a headset. And that has been a big part of it for us. The salesmen, I think, they were everyone's sort of nervous about implementing technology, because a lot of times it is technology for the sake of technology. And so for us, a big part of convincing the salesman has actually been me convincing the customer, who then goes to their salesman and wants that thing. So I
Yeah.
have a lot of contacts with our customers. I meet a lot of them at trade shows, and I tell them, if you want to see your equipment in on your phone, in a headset, whatever, ask your salesman and
Yep.
they will make me do it. And
Yeah.
so that's been a sort of interesting workaround for us, is that I've been very customer facing with this technology, and I've been very upfront with the executives as well, who are all very excited about all of this. And I think coming from those two directions, the salesmen get met right in the middle with pressure from both sides. And once they use it once with a customer interaction, they come back to me for more. So I think that's been really nice, is meeting customers where they are and sort of showing them what we can do, and then they get excited about it. And then you don't even have to convince anyone internally. If the customer is convinced that it's cool and it will benefit them in understanding their equipment better or visualizing it better, it's a no-brainer.
Yeah, no, that's really good advice. And so in kind of summarizing it, it's like, making sure people don't have to put on that headset if they're nervous, but making it like multi device. So, desktop, mobile, and a headset if you want to, but you don't have to.
For
So,
sure.
for companies out there looking to start deploying like interactive 3D or AR, we're always big proponents of web-based because it can be used on any device.
Yeah, and a
But
lot of those customers, when we meet them at the trade show, it being web-based, again, they could scan that at the trade show and they'd ask me, they'd say, can I like go show this to my wife or my kids when I get home? And I would say, yeah, the model's always going to be there. Just go take it back and show it off. And you would see the trickle down after the trade show of views, and you'd see a few randomly on those models after the
yeah.
trade show, of where people showed their friends or their family or whatever. So it's really cool that, yeah, like you said, the democratization of making it device agnostic is huge,
That's
huge.
awesome. Well, yeah, and I love that you're like actually just selling to the customer,
Yeah,
which is
yeah.
great.
I'll do it myself. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. Well, and if for other manufacturers looking to get started in 3D and AR, what are some good first steps or anything to watch out for?
Yeah, I think a big thing is having a sort of robust like process in your SolidWorks or whatever 3D, whether you're using Invent or whatever, so that the model you get out is really clean. Because it's really easy for those softwares for you add a lot of data that isn't necessary to visualization. So having a model that's as clean as it can be before it leaves the design software is super important, because sometimes I will get models, this happened to me last week, from a designer, upload it to Ventana, and it's just, there's stuff all over the place because the model was not, you know, designed specifically, or it wasn't simplified in a way that made a lot of sense for viewing after manufacturing. So a big part for us has been building this sort of pipeline of, here's the model, it's finished for manufacture. Now here's the version that can be uploaded to the digital asset management. So then we can say that we know it's clean and everything. Because so often those models, simplifying them or making them easier to use is a pain if you have to go back and do it, or if you're not the initial drafter. So like we've got a guy, if you've seen on ours, we've got full plants of Astec equipment where a lot of them are simplified as like Lego pieces so that we can then maneuver them in space and build puzzle block style plants. And if those plant components were left as full-fledged manufacturing models, they would be unusable. So that's been a big thing for us, is sort of understanding what models have use for what. And if we want to use them for more digital content, we need to prep the model accordingly. Because if you don't, it becomes a nightmare.
Yeah, because I've seen, when people are designing quickly, they'll start with an old model, make some adjustments, but then they might have an old pipe over here just in the scene that they forgot about because they were working from an old file, you know?
Yeah, and lots of stuff like SolidWorks, you can suppress geometries, but sometimes if you don't export them correctly, they will all show back up. And that's what
Mm,
happened last week when I uploaded a
ah,
file. Is the person didn't really understand how that would affect it. So it's all about building sort of a pipeline of, here's how we export files effectively for 3D as opposed to manufacturing, uh,
mhm.
to avoid problems like that.
Yeah, that's huge. And then I would imagine making sure like naming conventions and things like that so people can search and find what they need is
Totally.
all.
We've started using the tags now that we have, when we were initially using Ventana, we had 50 assets or something.
Mhm,
That wasn't as important, but now that we're at 1,000, we're approaching 1,000 at least.
mhm.
Tags have proved to be very important. And so that's something I always ask for more recently from the designers, is what's like the big 4 items buckets you would put this in, so that
Yeah.
when we go look for it again, it's not lost in the sea of content.
Yeah. No, that's awesome. Well, you guys are doing like so much in the space. It's so exciting. What are you most excited about in the next, 5 years for AR, 3D? How do you see it changing?
It's been interesting because I've really only been now working in sort of the AR 3D space for like a year and a half, 2 years, outside of like in my own room using VR for video games or whatever. But in my mind, the thing I'm most excited about, that I've been excited to watch happen over the last year, is the hardware sort of catch up to people's like dream. So, so often when we first revealed what we were doing, we did headsets tethered to individual machines with discrete GPUs so that we could push content. Well, that's a nightmare. It was
Yeah.
so nice to, watch the technology develop to a place where you can do on headset rendering. And I'm really excited about sort of the next generational step of that, which is what's looking like all these companies developing their version of the Magic Leap, which is the pass-through glasses like Snap and Meta have shown off. I'm excited to see those be a little bit more like wearable,
Hmm.
because, like I said, a lot of our customers are not very as tech savvy, which is understandable. And so making the headset experience as natural as putting on a pair of glasses means that folks will be a whole lot more willing to use them. So really, that's the thing that I'm most excited about, is seeing like, the hardware catching up to all the stuff you want to do so that
Yeah.
you can do it in a way that's not cumbersome.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, we'll keep coming up with more and new things that, the hardware have to keep catching up with.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. It's a
But
chicken and egg problem over and over and over. Yeah.
yeah, yeah. Well, Chase, thanks so much for joining us. This is so great. Where can people, find you or, Aztec Digital if they're looking to find more information about how you guys have implemented 3D and AR?
Yeah. Thanks for having me. It's been a great conversation. Like I said, my name's Chase Walker. I'm Winston Chase Walker on LinkedIn if you want to find me there. And you can find everything that we do at aztecindustries.com, or if you want to look at more of the tech side, the digital side, we just launched a few months ago, maybe 6 months ago, the aztecdigital.com website. All our information on what we're doing in extended reality. We're experimenting with machine learning, computational simulation, all sorts of things there. Yeah, that's where I'd look for it.
Awesome. Well, thanks so much. I'll talk to you soon, Chase.
Sounds good. Thank you.